Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, offers to work with the United States on shared development after Maduro's capture. She says her government now seeks respectful relations after earlier criticizing the raid as an illegal move. Ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is set to appear in Manhattan federal court on narco-terrorism charges after his US capture. Maduro and his wife are being held in Brooklyn and are due to before a judge later today, with legal arrangements still uncertain. Iran accuses Israel of trying to sow division after Netanyahu voices support for protests in the country. Authorities warn of incitement as rights groups say at least 16 people are killed during a week of unrest. After military action in Venezuela, US President Donald Trump says he needs Greenland for national security. His claims draw criticism from Denmark. An overnight Russian air attack on Kyiv and its region kills 2 people, Ukrainian officials say. Authorities say these are the first reported deaths in strikes on the capital this year. Israel and Syria are set to resume talks in Paris on Monday after progress towards a security deal stalled. The 2-day meeting follows pressure from President Donald Trump, who has been pushing for an agreement. President Donald Trump also warns tariffs on India could rise if New Delhi does not reduce purchases of Russian oil. He says pressure is growing as trade talks remain unresolved and some Indian exports already face high duties. The Israel Defense Forces say a drone strike in southern Lebanon kills 2 Hezbollah operatives near Jeman, claiming they violated the ceasefire. Lebanon's health ministry also reports 2 dead in the area as Israel releases footage of the strike. We start this hour in West Asia, and Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Esmail Baqai has condemned the US military attack on Venezuela. During a press conference in Tehran, Baqai said that those parties that committed the act of military aggression must unquestionably be held accountable before the international community. Venezuela's deposed leader Nicolas Maduro's detainment and removal to the United States following a military raid in Caracas has fueled expectations of what is likely to be one of the largest and potentially most complex sovereign debt reconstructions of all time. Earlier, Iran, in a statement, called the US attack on Venezuela a blatant violation of its national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Let's listen in to what the Iranian spokesman had to say.
جمهور و همسر رئیس جمهور یک کشور ربوده شده، این اصلاً جای افتخار نداره. این یک عمل کاملاً غیرقانونی است و همانطور که خود مقام‌های ونزوئلایی و مردم ونزوئلا تأکید کردن باید رئیس جمهورشون آزاد.
Joining us now is Gedaliah Blum, a Middle East affairs expert, joining us live from Eli. Thank you very much, Gedaliah, for joining us here on NewsX World. Of course, Iran, a long-time ally of Venezuela, and calling for the Americans to be held to account for their operations at the weekend in Caracas. How do you see this situation developing?
Well, you know, the alignment is not about mutual interests in domestic policy. It's more of a global interest in taking down the West. And you could see all the world leaders around the world who are condemning the arrest of the Venezuelan president. You could see exactly where they aligned. This is what the West calls the axis of evil, who are looking to undermine the freedom and democracies around the world in order to replace it with their own ism, their communism, their Islamism. And so this is par course for what is actually expected. This condemnation. The Iranian regime doesn't have any, they have no power anymore. They have no voice. They have no they have no legitimacy anymore. So I think this is a lot of theater, and I think that a lot of these world leaders who have aligned against the West are realizing that the Trump era is not going to sit back and let them roll over the United States and its allies anymore. So I think they're a bit scared, and I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's definitely going to be exciting to watch.
What message do you think Iran is trying to send Israel, specifically through its very strong statements to Venezuela here?
You know, with everything going on in Iran right now, with the cost of living, there's no water, people on the streets, they're rioting, the riots are growing. There's the leadership is not united right now. They're starting to break apart. So when you're talking about what kind of message is coming out of Iran, I think it's a desperate message, and it's not necessarily coordinated. So with what's coming out, I think it's you can't really look at the message from Iran as being the authority voice that's coming out. So it's really hard to say. But as far as Israel's concerned and the West, again, they're not coming from a place of authority. I think they're coming from a place of desperation, and their words are not really based in any type of reality. So any threats or any condemnation are kind of seen as something that's not to be taken seriously.
Okay, Gedaliah, stay with us as we move on to our next story. And Israeli authorities have told the Supreme Court that the ban on international media access to Gaza should remain in place, citing ongoing security risks. Since the October 2023 Hamas attack, foreign journalists have only been allowed limited entry embedded with Israeli forces. The Foreign Press Association filed a petition for unrestricted access, but Israel argues that journalists entering Gaza independently could endanger operations, including the ongoing search for the remains of the last hostage, Ran Gavili. The court had set a January the 4th deadline for a plan, and a ruling is expected soon. Since the ceasefire on October the 10th, at least 420 Palestinians and 3 Israeli soldiers have been killed. Gedaliah joins us once again to discuss this. Of course, this has been a huge topic of controversy. The Israeli forces not letting foreign journalists inside the Gaza Strip to report what is going on there, which of course leaves the public uninformed. There is, of course, a non-impartial feed coming out of the Gaza Strip. Do you agree that it's the wrong time to let foreign journalists in, even after this ceasefire?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good question, and honestly, I can make an argument from both sides. I'll make an argument by saying that Israel has nothing to hide, and I think that it should be that it should be open to foreign journalists 100%. The problem is, though, is this: a couple things. Number one, Gaza is not a free society, and we know this through internal memos from the Associated Press and a number of other global media outlets, is that their reporters are not safe in Gaza if they report against Hamas. So that's the problem, that the fact that Hamas is still in power creates a very significant challenge, not for security-wise. I think that if a reporter wants to go into Gaza and put their life at risk, we've seen this around the world throughout time with,
Gedaliah, of course,
reporters.
these war reporters have some decades of experience when it comes
Exactly.
to reporting on hostile front lines. So what makes this any different?
Yeah, no, and I agree with you, and I agree that the security-wise is that as long as they could sign some sort of release on their safety, I think that if somebody wants to put their own life on the line for their job, let them do so. The problem is, though, it's more of a PR question for Israel, I believe, is that, again, when Hamas is going to have complete control, meaning a reporter is not going to be able to go into Gaza and to go free without an escort from Hamas, making sure that they're seeing the right people, that they're speaking to the right people, that the people who they're speaking to understand that this is a Hamas operative who is watching and listening to every single word that they're saying.
But right now, foreign journalists are only allowed in embedded with Israeli forces, and the impartiality isn't there.
You know what? You're exactly right, and I think that's also a problem. And I think that there's never going to be impartiality. And I think that if we look at the reality of it, is that Israel is going to not highlight the mistakes we've made, but instead the successes we've made, and that they're going to see a biased point of view, 100%. On the other hand, if they are free to go around and speak to whoever that they want, that Hamas will be there. They have full control. They have a full continued grip over all aspects of life in Gaza. So either way, it's a no-win situation. And I think that if there were, for instance, press that have shown that they were objective throughout the last 2 years and not a megaphone for the Qatari regime, then I think that they should be let in, because I think that they can understand as a reporter what people are actually saying and what they're holding back because of who is there. And so I do think that eventually the doors are going to have to open for the press, and it's not going to be good because there's complete devastation in Gaza for many reasons. One of them is to create deterrence in the region, that Hezbollah didn't join the war, that Iran didn't come in full throttle, that the Houthis, I mean, they saw what we do to those enemies who come after us. And I think that most people coming in to report on the issue are not going to create that context. They're simply going to show this David and Goliath kind of type scenario where a big, a powerhouse of a military destroyed Gaza, and that's all they're going to see. So it's not going to look good either way. And so I'm just glad that I'm not the one making the decision, because there is no good solution here for anybody. And whatever is being chosen is going to show significant faults, and it's going to be condemned and complained about, especially when it comes to the pro-Israel group.
Gedaliah Blum, thank you very much for joining us and taking the time. It's a pleasure to speak to you, as always. We now move on, and Uganda's government has that it is banning live broadcasts of riots, unlawful processions and other violent incidents ahead of an election in which President Yoweri Museveni is seeking to extend his 40-year rule. Authorities have detained hundreds of opposition supporters ahead of the January the 15th election, which will again pit the 81-year-old Museveni against the 43-year-old pop star turned politician Bobby Wine. The military also prohibited the dissemination of any content it described as inciting hateful or violent. More than 50 people have been killed before the last election in 2021 in crackdowns by security forces against Wine supporters who accused Museveni of stealing the election, which he denied. Of course, we'll continue to bring you everything coming out of Uganda as those polls open and when they close. And for our next story, we move over to Asia. And China and Pakistan have reaffirmed their ironclad friendship and pledged to deepen strategic and economic cooperation as Islamabad's ties with Washington show signs of warming. In a joint statement, the two countries have said that they would upgrade the China-Pakistan economic corridor and expand collaboration in industry, agriculture, mining and the financial sector. China also praised Pakistan's efforts to protect Chinese personnel and projects amid past militant attacks targeting Chinese nationals. Both nations called for visible and verifiable actions to dismantle terrorist groups in Afghanistan, which borders both countries, though no further details were provided. Pakistan remains an all-weather strategic partner of China, a status dating back decades, and China views the partnership as a key part of its regional influence, while Islamabad also maintains growing ties with the US, including counter-terrorism cooperation and military aid under the Trump administration. The Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met Pakistani Finance Minister Ishaq Dar in Beijing, emphasizing the continuation of strategic mutual trust and understanding to break new ground in bilateral cooperation. Joining us now is Major General A.K. Sawatch, a geostrategic expert, joining us live from New Delhi to discuss this situation in further detail. Major General Sawatch, could you tell us a little bit about the Pakistani-China relationship and what it means for the broader region?
You know, as far as the Pakistan-China relations are concerned, they go back to 75 years. They are having 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations. As well as this time they are having 7th round of foreign minister strategic talk. The point is that Ishaq Dar is, as on today, in Beijing meeting Wang Wei, who is also a foreign minister of China. Now the discussion which is built up is basically both claim that both are a strategic partner and they stood by each other in time of any crisis. But they have also problem, and the problem is the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Now, as far as China is concerned, they have raised a red flag. The China-Pakistan economic corridor, out of 100% projects, it is only 33% projects which have been completed. Another 12 to 15% projects are under construction, and there are about 20 to 30% projects which are not started. And the reason is simple. The problem is that the internal situation in Pakistan is not to the good, and especially in Balochistan. If you see in Balochistan, the Balochistan Liberation Army, which is doing a freedom struggle, is very, very strong and potent. And they are striking on the Chinese workers as well. And also the Gwadar port, which was built to attract, a lot of facility for the ships in the port, that has not, neither it is completed nor it is attracting any foreign investors, and the airport is also not being utilized to full capacity. So overall what's happening is that the internal situation in Pakistan is so bad that the Chinese are feeling threatened to war, especially their engineer and technicians. So the situation is that flagship project China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, where $62 billion was invested by China, has gone down the drain, and not much has happened there. So Wang Wei has raised this question and raised this problem that something must be done, otherwise the Chinese will not be able to function in Pakistan.
Yes, and what of course does this mean for India? How will New Delhi be looking at this?
India always knows that Pakistan is only the front line. It is the China which is helping Pakistan. If you see this Operation Sindoor which has taken place, Pakistan have utilized almost 80% of the weapons given by China, no doubt about it. But these weapon systems all failed. If you see that their air defense system HQ-9, HQ-15, they were not successful in intercepting Indian drones, missiles or rockets. At the same time, you can see that their JF-10C and J-17, they also performed below par. PL-15 air-to-air missile, which was considered to be a very potent weapon, also not functioned to its best ability. It was not able to hit any target. So the point today is that Pakistan is always depending on China. As on today, Pakistan and China relationship are very strong, and this is not at the interest of India. And India always feels that there can be a chance when there can be a two-front war. That is, India may have to fight on the northern border with China and the western border with Pakistan, because the situation at times is building like this. And Pakistan has been defense point of view helped by China all in all, and that is a cause of concern to India. And you remember that as far as Pakistan is concerned, it is involved in a cross-border terrorism. Its policy of bleeding India with 1,000 cuts is still there, and China is all out to help out Pakistan to keep India engaged in internal conflict or a conflict on border, so that India cannot progress economically. This is the strategy which China is adopting it, but certainly it's a cause of concern. As far as India is concerned, the relationship between China and Pakistan are not to the interest of India, and especially that majority of weapons to Pakistan is coming from China. Second, real-time intelligence through the satellite is also given by the China to Pakistan.
Major General Sawatch, thank you very much for that insight. It's a pleasure talking to you here on NewsX World. We now move on, and Manchester United have sacked head coach Ruben Amorim after 14 months in charge. His final match was a 1-1 draw at Leeds, leaving United 6th in the Premier League. Tensions had reportedly been rising between Amorim and the club hierarchy, including Director of Football Jason Wilcox. The Portuguese manager was dismissed following a Monday morning meeting with Wilcox and Chief Executive Omar Berrada. In a statement, the club said the decision was made to give the team the best chance of a strong Premier League finish. Ex-midfielder and current under-18s coach Darren Fletcher will take interim charge for Wednesday's game at Burnley. Amorim had previously expressed frustration at limited backing in the transfer market, saying he came to be Manchester United's manager, not just a coach. So some huge breaking news from the football world, and with us to discuss this is Rahul Lakhani, a journalist at La Liga London. He joins live from London. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World to discuss this. And what does this tell you about the state of affairs at Old Trafford right now?
Well, Amorim's dismissal really just sums up what a mess Manchester United have been since the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson. He's one of several managers who have failed to make an impact at Old Trafford. And it also shows that there's no real clear direction that they're going in. Sir Jim Radcliffe from Ineos, he was convinced last year that Amorim needed 3 years to make his mark. But just 14 months later, he's out of a job again. Again, mid-season, for the third season in 4 years, they're looking for a new manager. They've currently got an interim coach in charge, and they don't really have a clear direction of where they want to go. Amorim himself did himself no favours with his results, with the performances. He has the lowest win rate of any Manchester United manager, and the players didn't seem to take to his style. He didn't improve any of them. So results-wise, you can't argue against his departure. But what really caused his departure was a fallout of Jason Wilcox. And it sums it all up that Manchester United were prepared to stick by him through bad results, through losing the Europa League final, falling out of European football. But as soon as the hierarchy is criticised, as soon as there's a bit of a fallout there, then he's out of a job, and they're still having to pay off his contract for until 2027. So right now, it's a real sad state of affairs at Manchester United.
And Rahul, Amorim leaves after merely 14 months in charge. What kind of legacy is he going to leave at Old Trafford?
Well, when Ruben Amorim was appointed last year from Sporting Club de Portugal, he was a very highly rated manager. He's only 40 years old. He's got a long career ahead of him. His reputation's taken such a nosedive. It's now become clear how stubborn he is over his tactics. A big reason for his departure was the refusal to move away from a 3-4-3, despite the club clearly wanting him to do so. And I think he will need to reassess where he is in football and where his next job will be. He will need to be at a club where he's allowed the freedom to play his own style, to stick by his own principles. And at Man United, unfortunately for him, he will leave a bad legacy. He leaves with a worse win rate than anyone. Only Ralf Rangnick, as an interim, had a worse one in the entire history of Man United, I believe. And there will be no fond memories of Amorim. They lost the Europa League final to Tottenham in a game where they frankly should have won. You could count the amount of good performances on one hand in the last 14 months. Tactically, there was a lot of difference between what the fans wanted to see and the style he played. They've had a serious bad run of form at Old Trafford. The match-going fans every week were fed up of his tactics. And yeah, I don't think there will be anyone really who will miss Ruben Amorim. There may be a few who think he should have been handed more time.
Yes.
There will certainly be those who think that the club are far more to blame than the managers, as has been the case in the past. But there won't be much sympathy for him.
And Rahul, what does this mean for the rest of Manchester United's season? I mean, of course, the January transfer window's just opened.
Well, it became clear in recent weeks that Amorim wanted more backing in January. I think he wanted a Premier League proven striker Right now, he's only got Benjamin Sesko and Joshua Zirkzee, who are two young strikers who are struggling to adapt to his system. And I think the club disagreed with him there. I think this indicates that there may not be much movement in January. And I certainly can't see a Premier League proven striker such as Ollie Watkins coming in January now. I think if they were going to do that, they would have backed Amorim to do so. Darren Fletcher is in charge for the rest of the season, and it remains to be seen whether he will just take the interim role until the end of the season, or if they will try and hire someone new. I think the mistake they made last year was not going with an interim after they sacked Erik ten Hag, and they forced Amorim to take the job earlier than he wanted to. And this meant Amorim came in with no pre-season, no transfers, and it meant he was doomed from the start. He couldn't make the impact he wanted to. So I think for the end, with the rest of the season, they're sixth in the Premier League. Top four is still attainable if they can improve the results. So it's a question of how well Darren Fletcher does in the upcoming weeks. And in January, I honestly can't see many big transfers. But if they were to act in the window, I think they definitely need a midfielder. They probably need an attacker, despite spending so much in the summer window. And depending on injuries elsewhere, they may need a fullback, they may need even a centre-back. So there's a lot to do in that Manchester United squad. It wasn't all Ruben Amorim's fault. But whether the club are willing to do so and invest in players that the next manager may not then want is a bit of a risk which they've fallen victim to in the past. So it all depends on which direction they go in for their next manager.
Rahul Lakhani, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to get your insight on that topic. Thank you very much for taking the time. We now finish off the hour with some tech news. And the term Microslop is trending on social media platforms like X, Reddit, and Mastodon as a derogatory label for Microsoft. The backlash is driven by growing AI fatigue and frustration over the company's aggressive integration of artificial intelligence into its core products. The trend surged after CEO Satya Nadella published a blog post looking ahead into 2026, in which he urged the industry to move beyond the arguments of slop versus sophistication. Critics view this as an attempt to dismiss legitimate concerns about low-quality AI-generated content, which is often referred to as slop being forced into the user workflows. Users expressed anger over AI features appearing in basic tools like Notepad and Photos, as well as the transition of Windows 11 into what Microsoft calls an agentic OS. The online community has adopted Microslop as a way to mock Microsoft's current direction, with some even calling for it to become the company's unofficial name. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates. Thank you.